The next article is from Business Standard newspaper, that is Development Debate. In this article, the writer says that a new discussion paper by the National Institute of Statistics and India, NIT Aayog, has revealed that about 248.2 million Indians have escaped multi-dimensional poverty over the past 9 years. The paper, based on data from the National Family Health Surveys for 2015 to 16 and V 2019 to 21, found that multidimensional poverty had declined from 29.17% in 2013 to 14 to 11.28% in 2022 to 23, with the level expected to decline to single digits soon. The multidimensional poverty index is considered a better indicator than traditional measures, as it takes into account 10 indicators in 3 broad areas: education, health, and standard of living. The Indian version also includes maternal health and bank accounts. However, more data on different aspects of poverty is needed for better policy making. India still has a long way to go, and policy efforts must focus on attaining and sustaining high economic growth over the long run. Sustained high growth in per capita income will pull more people out of poverty and improve well-being. State-level data shows significant disparity, and more policy attention will be needed in areas where states have been far behind in India's development march. Policy interventions will partly need to focus on the next level of improvement, such as reorienting government expenditure. Questions such as whether to spend on free food for the majority of the population, the prevalence of cash transfers, or state resources to bridge development gaps are still being debated. Hello everyone, let's discuss today's The Hindu editorial page. The first article is Judicial Contradiction in Delhi, Chief Secretary's Extension. In this article, the writer says that the Supreme Court of India's judgment in November 2023 permitting a 6-month extension to Delhi's Chief Secretary, Naresh Kumar, is an example of the court's judicial self-abnegation. The court sets out the correct doctrine, but when the government refuses to follow the law laid down, it buckles down and invents a subsequent justification for the government to do as it wants. This kind of reversal renders the court's judgments as writ in water. Delhi's incumbent chief secretary has serious charges of corruption and favoritism against him, with the Delhi Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal writing to the Delhi Lieutenant Governor seeking the chief secretary's removal. He was already due to retire on November 30, 2023, and the Delhi government had sought discussions with the centre on appointing a successor. On November 29th, the Chief Justice asked the Solicitor General, "Or you, Centre, can let this man superannuate and make a fresh appointment. Don't you have an IAS officer who can be appointed Chief Secretary?" The Solicitor General responded that a 2023 Amendment Act gave the Centre statutory authority over the civil services in the national capital. Later, the court was informed that the centre had chosen to extend the Chief Secretary's tenure by 6 months. The passage of the Amendment Act must be noted that the Government of National Capital Territory of Delhi, Amendment Act 2023, had been challenged by the Delhi government but had not been stayed by the courts due to a presumed assumption of constitutionality. The Act had been passed to nullify portions of the earlier services judgment dated May 11, 2023, which held that under Article 239AA of the Constitution, the elected government of Delhi exercises control over services in Delhi. The court held that references to state government in the relevant All India Rules (AIR) or Joint Cadre Rules (JCR), which related to Delhi, shall mean the government of Delhi. Now the Supreme Court has carved an exception for the Chief Secretary of Delhi by holding that he is differently placed than other officers under the AIR or JCR and thus not bound by the services judgment. If the government controls services, its choice must prevail in the choosing of its prime servant, the Chief Secretary. However, the court's current order of November 29, 2023, permitting the union government to unilaterally extend the tenure of the incumbent Delhi Chief Secretary, despite the Delhi government's opposition, seems to have undone the court's own reasoning and constitutional logic. The Supreme Court's order of November 29, 2023 permits the union government to unilaterally extend the tenure of the incumbent Delhi Chief Secretary, despite the Delhi government's opposition. The rule requires with full justification and in public interest. As mentioned earlier, serious allegations of conflict of interest have been levied against the incumbent Chief Secretary, and the court's decision has been criticized for its judicial self-abnegation. The next article is Historic Hearing. A provisional order by ICJ on Israel will cast shadow on legitimacy of its war. In this article, the writer says that the International Court of Justice, ICJ, in The Hague, has been a topic of global attention due to South Africa's case against Israel's ongoing military campaign in Gaza. The 15-member court, along with 2 ad hoc judges representing South Africa and Israel, has considered the history of the conflict. Both countries have long been in diplomatic isolation, but both have the support of their Western allies. Today, the entire world supports a ceasefire in Gaza to end the epic suffering of its people. South Africa sought to demonstrate that some of Israel's acts were within the terms of the Genocide Convention and had a genocidal intent. It relied on data on deaths, destruction, and collapse of civil life and health infrastructure in Gaza. Israel described the South African case as blood libel before the hearing, but sought to make a case that its Gaza operations were a legitimate response to the terrorist attack on October 7th last year. It played down the relevance of its leader's statements and attributed civilian casualties to Hamas using civilians as shields and hospitals as storage for explosives and launching pads for attacks. The larger concern is whether Israel will abide by any provisional measure. Russia ignored an ICJ order to suspend its operations in Ukraine in March 2022. But there is little doubt that any provisional measure will cast a shadow on the legitimacy of Israel's Gaza war. The next article is also from Business Standard newspaper, that is Rising Global Risks, Alarming WEF report, highlights the need for collective action. In this article, the writer says that the World Economic Forum's Global Risks Report 2024 presents a pessimistic outlook for the global risk landscape over the next 2 and 10 years. Climate-related risks, particularly extreme weather events, remain a dominant theme, both in the short and long terms. The most severe short-term threat is the threat from misinformation and disinformation, which has magnified its reach and scope, especially in India. Disinformation can be used by foreign and domestic actors to malign political legitimacy and corrode democratic processes in the long run. The number of people believing in false narratives has surged due to disinformation, with people skimming news stories without checking sources and sharing them with others in their network. Societal polarization is another risk closely linked to threats from disinformation, as one tends to amplify the other. Legislation can theoretically regulate the spread of false information, and governments can focus on awareness campaigns to help citizens spot disinformation. However, some of these steps could give governments the power to regulate content on the internet, undermining freedom of expression. The report identifies extreme weather events as the most pressing risk over a longer period, with threats such as critical change to Earth systems, biodiversity loss and ecosystem collapse, natural resource shortages, and pollution. Addressing these issues requires an evolved approach to climate risk management and increased investment in research and development to boost preparedness for inevitable events. The report also highlights the importance of collective action and technology that can act as an enabler against the climate threat. but collaboration at the global scale has not been forthcoming due to the reluctance of advanced economies. The next article is from Pioneer newspaper. That is MSMEs need cost institutional credit. In this article, the writer says that the micro, small and medium enterprises, MSMEs, are crucial to India's economic growth, contributing around 30% of the country's GDP, 45% to its manufacturing output, and 48% to exports. However, the sector faces financial constraints due to constant working capital expenditure and inaccessibility to mainstream finance. The Parliamentary Standing Committee on Finance has revealed that less than 40% of MSMEs avail credit from formal financial systems, resulting in costly and unreliable credit. The credit gap in the MSME sector is estimated to be around Rs 25 lakh crore, with an addressable credit demand of about Rs 37 lakh crore and an existing mainstream supply of only Rs 15 lakh crore. The MSME sector consistently contributes around 30% to India's GDP, 45% to its manufacturing output, and 48% to exports, while generating employment for 11 crore people out of 6.34 crore MSMEs. Almost 99% of the MSMEs are represented by micro-enterprises, and less than 1% are categorized under small and medium segments. Despite recent amendments, institutional credit does not match the investment requirements of micro-enterprises, which are business entities with investments of up to Rs 1 crore and turnover of up to Rs 5 crore. Accessing capital remains a significant challenge for MSMEs that aspire to grow. The Reserve Bank of India (RBI) has designated MSMEs as a priority sector and directed banks to allocate 40% of the adjusted net bank credit (ANBC) to priority sectors, including MSMEs. However, most banks do not go beyond 25% for MSME credit. Regulatory obligations have a compounding effect on firm growth, with only 342 out of 6.34 crore MSMEs listed on the BSE SME exchange. Listed SMEs need to comply with SEBI, RBI and Companies Act regulations, which can be a high regulatory burden and compliance cost. The government needs to implement steps to ensure the survival and growth of vital MSMEs in India to save critical livelihoods and generate employment. The Indian MSME sector sources 84% of its working capital requirements from informal financiers, and informal money lenders exploit the difference between the expectations of formal lenders and MSMEs, leading to their unwillingness towards formalization. To make MSMEs globally competitive and improve credit access, the Parliamentary Finance Committee recommends the introduction of a Merchant Credit Card (MCC) scheme for traders and a Via Par Credit Card (VCC) for micro units. These schemes could be similar to the Keys and Credit Card scheme with interest subvention, which is still awaited.